Chinese currency, the yuan, and when we pay you with the yuan, then you can then redeem that yuan for gold. So the Chinese are not in conflict with the IMF. They're skillfully avoiding being in conflict with the IMF. And we will buy that gold in the market. So we're not going to use our reserves of gold to pay you for the oil. So our reserves of gold will become depleted. No, we want to keep our reserves of gold. And you'll be able to change redeem the yuan in the market for gold. Whatever the price of gold is in the market, we will pay, and then you'll then be able to get your gold for your oil. And this is a very admirable plan on the part of the Chinese. It has a lot of integrity in it. It has a lot of justice in it. And I would commend to the government of Trinidad and Tobago to negotiate an agreement with, not a negotiate agreement, but to study the subject and to see whether you can stand side by side with Venezuela in doing the same thing. But I don't know whether the government of Trinidad and Tobago has the strength and the courage and the backbone to do such a thing. Yes. There's a question from YouTube. Hello? 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 No, we don't have a question. Is the World War III, oh, that's a question. Is World War III coming? I would have preferred if we could have stayed with the subject of money. But I'll just spend a minute with you on that question on World War, and then we return to the subject of money and to what is riba. What the United States of America is doing now is they're fishing for some pretext with which they can have the Great War, the World War. They want it. They want the World War. The stupid fools want a World War which will cause the deaths of 99% of all those who fight in the war. So all these people who are fighting in the U.S. Armed Forces are just like guinea pigs. They'll all die. But these who won the war, they don't care for you. They're fishing for a World War. They did it in the First World War. They did it in the Second World War. And they're now doing it again. They did it in Korea as well. They like to fish for a war. But one day, Kongote. If you keep on fishing for a war, one day, Kongote, you see what Allah will do with you one day. And that's what's coming to the United States. The United States is now in irrevocable decline. It doesn't matter to me if the U.S. Embassy in Trinidad and Tobago is displeased with me. I don't care two peanuts about your views. No. You wage war, miserable war on the truth, on justice with all your false flag terrorism, and then telling me I'm a terrorist. We're not fools. No. The likely scenario now, the situation is evolving rapidly. The likely scenario will be Korea. Yeah. They will do something to provoke Korea until eventually Korea will have to respond. And they're waiting for Korea to respond with an act, a military act. From the time Korea responds with a military response, that is the cue, and then they'll have the Great War. They will launch nuclear war on Korea. Korea will then launch nuclear war on South Korea. Millions and millions will die in South Korea. Do they deserve that death? They should ask themselves whether they've been sensible or foolish in putting all their eggs in one basket. The U.S. basket. The U.S. don't care for you, no? So it's likely that the Third World War is going to start with fireworks in Korea. But I can be wrong. I've been wrong in the past. This is my view at this time. Okay. We return now to our subject of money. And Allah and His Messenger are at war against the moneylender. Remember that. And if Allah and His Messenger are at war against the moneylender, then we should be also at war. We should be struggling to eradicate riba. And Allah says, when you choose to get out of riba, the money lender is entitled to the principal sum. That is, you lend your money on interest, you're getting back the principal sum plus an additional amount. That in the additional amount is riba or interest, and that is haram, is prohibited. But if you want to give up the riba, then you're entitled to the return of the principal sum. That is what the verse is saying. If you give up your money lender, you can give up the riba, but you're entitled to the return of the principal sum which was lent. So this is riba, lending or borrowing money on interest. And Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has cursed you. He's also cursed those who record the transaction, and he's cursed the witnesses, and he said they're all equally guilty. Now let me tell you something that your Maulana probably never tells you. Your Darul Uloom probably will never tell you. If you have the curse of a prophet upon you, then you can perform your salat, it's not going to be accepted. If you have the curse of a prophet upon you, you can go perform Hajj, it will not be accepted. You can fast in Ramadan, it will not be accepted if you have the curse of a prophet upon you. You can give money in charity, it won't be accepted. Nothing will be accepted if you have the curse of a prophet upon you. Therefore, we have to formulate a proper response. How do we deal with the subject of riba? It is amazing, it's not taught. You can go and listen to the khutbah for Jummah. From now until eternity, you'll never hear a khutbah or a sermon on the Friday, on the Jummah, on the subject of riba. No, nobody wants to explain the subject. They're scared of the subject. Yes. But this is not the only form of riba. But before we turn to the other form of riba, why has Allah prohibited money being lent on interest? Does He explain to us why? Before we scratch our head to find an answer, let's go in the Quran and see whether the Quran gives an answer. In the Quran, Allah gives at least two answers. He says, first of all, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. Allah has made business halal, but He's made riba haram. He makes a contrast between business and riba, or money lending on interest. He says this is halal, but this is haram. So what's the difference between a business transaction and a riba transaction? That is the question. Do you understand? The question is, what is the difference between a business transaction and a riba transaction? How do they differ with each other? Which explains why this one is halal and this one is haram. The answer is, here is the answer, that a business transaction is a transaction in which there is always an element or a factor of risk. R-I-S-K, you're taking a chance, risk. You can either make a profit or you can suffer a loss. Every businessman knows that. So a good businessman will study the market to try to achieve an informed judgment on the market. So that I'm not taking too great a risk, but I cannot avoid a risk. No. A good business transaction is one in which, yes, I know there's an element of risk, but all the other factors are there making this likely to be a successful business. Once there is the element of risk, however, then Allah can enter into the market and take from some and give to others. He can cause you to have a loss and He can cause him to have profit. So He can take from some and give to others. So wealth will not remain concentrated only amongst the wealthy. Allah can cause the distribution of wealth and the redistribution of wealth by taking from some and giving to others. Governments are not supposed to distribute and redistribute wealth. When they do so, they make a mistake, they make a mess of it, and they fill their pockets with money. Well then, what about the riba transaction? The reason why a riba transaction does not qualify as a business transaction, listen carefully, is because the money lender wants to eliminate the possibility of loss. He wants to immunize himself from any possibility of loss. The money lender wants to get his pound of flesh secure without any possibility of loss. That's why I love William Shakespeare. The greatest sheikh of all of Britain is William Shakespeare. And his book, The Merchant of Venice, explains the subject of riba to perfection. Ah, yes, perfection. The Merchant of Venice, because he called it a pound of flesh. The money lender wants a pound shayla. This was what the Jews were doing. And Shakespeare was absolutely correct in pronouncing Shylock's conduct, who was a Jew, to be deplorable and morally reprehensible and unjust. And he denounced it. So the riba transaction does not qualify as a business transaction because the money lender lends on the condition that come rain or come sunshine, you have to return his money to him with an additional amount. He is secure in getting that additional amount. There is no possibility of loss. He ensures that he gets his pound of flesh because he has something like a mortgage. He takes something as collateral, so if you cannot repay, he seizes your property. Yes, he seizes your property. This is money lending, and this is one form of riba. And when an economy is based on money lending, on interest, riba, then wealth no longer circulates through the economy. No. The rich will remain permanently rich forever and ever and ever and ever. And the poor will not only remain permanently poor forever and ever and ever and ever, but they'll go increasingly poorer and poorer and poorer and poorer until they become slaves. When you have debts and you cannot repay them, you're in slavery. You are in slavery. They will do all kinds of things to you to ensure that you lose your freedom when you have debts and you cannot repay your debts. Yes. So this is one form of riba. But in the Quran, Allah speaks of another form of riba. And to recognize the other form of riba in the Quran, we need to go to the Prophet, Allah's blessings be upon him, because he was sent to teach the Quran. And he explained to us the other form of riba, which I have also explained in previous lectures. That is a transaction which is based on deception. A transaction which is based on deception, which yields a profit or a gain greater than that to which one is justly entitled, is riba. The Americans have a nice term for it. They call it a rip-off. Yes, a rip-off. He said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, if you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, and you buy his goods from him before he could enter into the market, and when he enters into the market, he finds that he could have gotten a better price, that, said the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, is riba. You exploited his ignorance of the market price. to enter into a transaction with him in which you ripped him off. When he went into the market and he found that he was ripped off, he wouldn't want to do business with you again. He wouldn't even want to shake hands with you again. That's not the way business should be transacted. Listen to me if you're a businessman. Listen to me. The Quran says, لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل. Don't rip off people. إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم. You must do business in such a way that there is mutual satisfaction. So when that man does business with you and he is satisfied and you are satisfied, he will always want to come back to you to do business with you, particularly if you have a motor car garage. That's where the rip-off takes place. If you have a garage and you are a mechanic and you fix his car for him and you charge him a price which is reasonable and he is satisfied with the job and the price, even if the man moves to live far away, he still drive to come to you, to your garage. Why? Because he trusts you now. And when someone trusts you in business, they will trust you in other things as well. That's why when Muslim businessmen, Arabs, went to in Southeast Asia as businessmen, the way they did business in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Thailand and these places, it so impacted upon the local people that these were people we could trust. You can't trust the United States, the government of the United States that tell monstrous lies. Would you trust them? So these are people you can trust. And when you can trust him with business, you can trust him with truth as well. That's why they all became Muslims. That's why they all became Muslims, yes. So if you deceive someone in a business transaction and rip him off, that is riba. Let me repeat the hadith. If you are fair dodo, listen to me. If you meet a man coming to the market to sell his goods, and you buy his goods from him before he could enter into the market, and when he enters into the market, said the Prophet ﷺ, he finds that he could have gotten a better price in the market, that is riba. Now when we go to the Quran, Allah speaks to us about the market at the time of Shu'aib alayhi salam, and how people were being ripped off in that market, and he destroyed them. Yes. And 3 times in the Quran, Allah has given a command. He says, وَلَا تَبْخَسُ النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ بَخْسٍ. Do not diminish people's property. Do not diminish people's wealth. Do not diminish the value of people's labor. Make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Ripping them off. There's a call from Charlieville. Okay. Hello?
Okay.
Hello?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam.
Sheikh,
Yes?
could we make an analogy concerning riba with the hadith on alcohol, in that alcohol, the name will be changed and people will consume. So riba, the analogy is that the name will be changed and people will try to make it halal. And we have an institution in Trinidad, an Islamic institution, that doesn't seem to be getting off the ground at all. Is it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not bless such transactions? Your views, please.
Well, I'm not sure whether a link can actually be made. I'm not sure whether a link can actually... Hello? I'm saying that I'm not sure whether a link can actually be made between the revelations pertaining to alcohol and the revelations pertaining to riba. But I remember writing in my book something on the subject, but I just can't remember it now. I just can't remember. You have, forgive me about that. If you go to my book entitled The Quranic Method of Curing Alcoholism and Drug Addiction, in that book I made some comments on the link between alcohol and riba. Sorry, I can't remember it now. I'm 75 years of age, huh? Okay. The Muslim Credit Union in Trinidad and Tobago has been attempted for a long, long time now to try to get off the ground, and no matter how much I try to explain to them, they don't want to listen to me. They've been engaged in riba without calling it riba. It's something called murabaha. You know, you want to buy a house and you can't afford to buy it cash, so you go to the credit union. And the credit union will say, no problem, we'll buy the house for $1 million cash, and then we sell it to your credit for $2 million or $3 million. And because both parties know the what they call it, markup. I don't know where they get the term from, markup. They call it markup, the profit margin. This is, you're buying for 1, you're selling for 3. You're buying for 1, you're selling for 3. And it's a credit transaction. This is murabaha. It's not murabaha, it's riba. If you are selling it cash, you're buying it 1 million cash, you're selling it 3 million cash, okay. But the fellow who buying it for 3 million cash, get him to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. Yes. Stop the nonsense. If you're buying cash and you're selling cash, then tell the fellow to get an appointment with a psychiatrist and get his head fixed, because he got only peanuts in his head. Why should he buy cash for 3 million when he can buy cash for 1 million? You think we are fools? No. The reason why he's buying for 3 million when it is on sale for 1 million is because he's buying credit, not cash. The difference between the credit price and the cash price is riba. But they call it markup. But wait until they go in their grave and then they'll know. Wait until they go in their grave and then they'll know. They don't want to listen to Imran Hosein now. Never mind, never mind, never mind you and your murabaha. Wait until you go in your grave and then you will know. Yes. So this is why they can't get off the ground. There's no barakah in that. A call from Monroe Road, yes? Hello?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing, Sheikh?
I'm fine, alhamdulillah.
Okay, well, I have a question. For the longest while, I've been trying to defer from taking a loan from the bank. And, well, one of my reasons, my main reason, because the bank, or the money in the bank is interest money from the Federal Reserve, is it wrong to take this loan from the bank? Because basically what we are doing, we are accepting riba in exchange for this money. We are accepting riba so that we can get this money to buy whatever we need or we think we need. And finally, the bank that we're going to is a Jewish guy that owns this bank, or a Jewish organization or a Zionist organization that owns this bank. So then I'm going to these people to tell them that I am willing to pay them interest because I need this item. So is that the right way of thinking of it, or do I have the wrong concept?
No, the first thing is, if you have to begin from the beginning, and you have to ask whether or not the money which is now being used is halal or haram. Unfortunately, the subject is not taught in the Darul Uloom. I went to Darul Uloom Newcastle in South Africa. We have a graduate of Darul Uloom Newcastle here in Monroe Road, a young man here. I met him. But he was not there when I went to lecture at Darul Uloom Newcastle. Maulana Sima was alive at that time, he was there. And I lectured before the Darul Uloom with all the staff, the students, on the subject of Islam and the international monetary system for 2 hours or more. Maulana Sima sat down for the whole lecture. And at the end of the whole lecture, he came and he hugged me. And he said to me, we have to teach this subject in the Darul Uloom. Unfortunately, Maulana Sima was about 85 years of age. He died. May Allah have mercy on him. What a wonderful man he was. I love him very much. They don't teach the subject in the Darul Room, so they don't know. That's why, and they're giving fatwa, bogus fatwa. And they wouldn't listen to me. Wait. I'm warning you. You wait and you see what's going to happen. You're not listening to me. This is not arrogance on my part. You're my brothers and I love you, but I'm fed up. I waited long enough and you will not listen. You are arrogant. You will not listen. You believe you are right, so wait and see what's going to happen. If you consider the paper money to be halal, then it is right, it's okay for people to take paper and say, kabba, whatever it is, and they become money. And they give to it a fictitious value, and that's halal money for you. If that is halal, then you can do anything with it. But I say it's haram. So the first transaction of the issuance of the money is haram. Borrowing the money on interest is a haram transaction. So how can one haram and two haram make a halal? No, I don't think that's a proper way in which to proceed with the subject. The better way would be for you to come and join us on the 5th of November when we meet. But you must first send me an email to be invited. You can't just walk in. No, it's a private gathering. So we can sit down and put our heads together here in Trinidad to discuss, well, what do we do? What do we do? And I have some ideas to share with you on the subject. That is that we must start minting dinar and dirham, gold and silver coins. I have studied the subject. I have lectured on the subject. I have written books on the subject. But I'm the only voice talking about dinar and dirham. Where are the others? What are they? They're fair dodo, sleeping all the time. So if we start minting, if the temple in Jerusalem minted gold and silver coins, Nabi Isa alayhi salam was there, and he's a prophet of Allah, then we can also mint dinar and dirham in the masjid. If the temple in Jerusalem, Masjid al-Aqsa, if they minted dinar and dirham, we can do the same thing here. It's halal for us to do it. Yes. And I don't think the government of Trinidad and Tobago will be so foolish to intervene to stop us. One last question before we end. We have a minute left. Will the United States strike Iran after breaking the Iran deal to prevent Iran from developing nuclear missiles to reach Israel? Can Iran resist USA militarily? No, I think the United States is shadowboxing with Iran. There will not be a war with Iran. No, I think the war will be with Korea. More likely that they'll provoke Korea because the Iranian military is not under the control of Rouhani. The Iranian military is under the control of Ayatollah Khamenei. And Ayatollah Khamenei is a man of great integrity, great knowledge, great wisdom. He is an admirable leader. Ayatollah Khamenei, I have great respect for that man, yes. So I don't think you can start a war with Iran so easily. No. The United States is going to become isolated now because Europe is parting from the United States on the subject of the Iran nuclear agreement. I opposed the agreement in the beginning, yes, but we don't have time now to talk about that. Thank you. Until next week, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.